It's good, YouTube. Cardfight can't hear. Aqua Life, baby. You already know how it is. So, what I want to do in today's video is I wanted to kind of, again, go back to what I talked about during the deck profile. And I think I used the wrong terminology. I used train. But more or less, this is conditioning your opponent to react to Theo. The reason for this is because from my play testing and, just tournament experience, numerous playtest games, I've tried to do this thing where I focus on getting the most value or maximum value out of a certain unit in my deck usually. And when I was working with Theo, trying to figure out what's the best place to place, where's the best place to put Theo? What is the best moves I can make to, ensure that I get the most out of Theo, turn per turn per turn. And what I really determined with Theo was that he's more of a conditioning card. He's more of a card to condition your opponent to guard him a lot more than anything else, or force your opponent to begin guarding him because they don't want to, have to use an extra stage of guarding to do anything. So what I mean is that, and I feel like he's best when you are on Maelstrom. Being on Navel Gazer, I feel with Theo is decent in a way because you can give something to power because he'll swing for 30k, which is a really good number as well. But Theo has more of an effect on the game overall and what your opponent is going to do in reaction to it when you're on Maelstrom. And it's for the fact that, like I always say, your opponent does not want Maelstrom's ability to go off. They do not want Maelstrom restanding on them. Why? Because it's potentially so. And then I had to play against Aqua Force to kind of figure out what the thinking was, and it's the fact that you don't want, you don't want to deal with an extra attack, especially if you have not hit a trigger on damage, because as your damage adds up, it gets to that point in the game where you're really not trying to take a damage because that's more cards you're going to have to guard, more attacks you're going to have to guard. But it's an extra damage on board, and two, it's another 2 chances for them to check a trigger, whether it's a heal trigger that can give the opponent, some new life, or be able to eat a damage and, assist with their guarding capabilities, whether it's a draw trigger, adding a key piece to their hand, or just like a front trigger or a crit trigger, something. A crit could end you if you have to no guard it, or if you 2-pass and they get it. A front trigger can boost a unit, to where it's like, dang it, now I have to, I ate this damage, now I have to do this. It's just, a worry that naturally would creep into a player's mindset of, what is this restand going to do to me? And why I say Theo is more effective in this role is because when you have a pattern such as this, where you would go with swing title, Soul Blast 1, restand, and after you use Maelstrom's Counterblast, ability to gain +3 to the front row. So title will be swinging for 12. Then you could swing for 23k, and that's a good number on there. We can do our drive check. This is just a sample, whatever it is. But you do your drive check, and if this does hit, because the opponent is thinking, well, hey, I'm not going to guard. The first 2 attacks are not really too threatening to me. This attack here is just an attack. This attack here is just an attack. Theo adds value to your second attack when you swing with Maelstrom. A lot of times, if I don't have Theo on board, for instance, I would swing Maelstrom at a rear guard because I want to make my third and fourth attacks so much more valuable to get off his restand. Play. And sometimes they might take an attack, but it's a good way because, like I said, where a lot of small attacks, we have a different calculation of how we need to approach and attack our opponent. Because we can sometimes, I mean, yes, we could swing on our Vanguard for 12 and restand. They hit a trigger, and that really hurts our entire turn. And then there are different ways to avoid that to make every attack more valuable. So you can go 12, and then you can go 12 at another rear, 15 at a rear guard. And again, this is another reason why Maelstrom, you know, depending on how you may have to alter your attack patterns throughout the game, which is why I feel as if Maelstrom right now would love to have front triggers, because if, you know, you could swing on them, then you hit a front trigger, and then everything here would get a boost, and all you did was swing at a rear guard. Now, these attacks are a lot more threatening to hit, you know, your opponent, and then give Maelstrom a restand, who will then be swinging at 25k instead of 15. But that's just really without a boost, and how, you know, your attack pattern can go. But with Theo on the board, it does give you a play to swing at your opponent's Vanguard with this. Then, you know, and a lot of times at first they'll no guard it, and this conditioning method is a lot. You'll see it a lot more often in a best of 3, obviously, than a best of 1, because you only play the opponent once. But you know, you'll swing here for 23. They'll no guard. You'll do your trigger checks. Let's say you don't get anything. And then so after the battle, after it hits, they check for damage, right? So let's say they do check for damage. Okay, great. They check for damage. If they did not hit a damage trigger, well then that makes this play a lot better. This means you can give 8k to that Tidal Assault, putting Tidal Assault to 20k. And Tidal Assault is just an example. You know, you can have something like, you know, him on the board or whatever it is, but I'm using Tidal as an example because, you know, Tidal is the greatest rear guard of all time. But Tidal will be swinging for 20k. So instead of this card now against Force decks only hitting a grade 2 or lower rear guard, and against Protect and Excel being able to just swing on the Vanguard for a 5k block and 5k block or 5k intercept, he's sitting at 20, which means that it's a 10k shield for, you know, it's a 10k shield block on the Vanguard for a for any Vanguard you have. It's a solid 10k block. Then you can save this attack maybe for last, or you can, you know, and then you still have 25 here and then 35 there. You know, threatening to restand Maelstrom, for instance. But you keep doing this throughout the game. Now, it might not be apparent on your first few swings, but if it's something that keeps happening, that you're going to sit here, poke a rear guard with Tidal, restand, swing 23 on the Vanguard, no guard, you get 8k. Let's say if they do hit a trigger, that's perfectly fine. We can give the 8k over here to Lazarus, and Lazarus is going to go from, and again, this is with Maelstrom skill, but Lazarus is going to go from 25k to 33k. Now, the 33k, you know, against the Force is a fantastic number to make against them. This means that they are going to have to still drop a 50 if they hit a trigger on damage on his attack. This means that they're still going to have to drop a 15k shield to block this, and then they're going to have to drop another 15k shield to block Riptide. You know, obviously, if you have them, if you do have like these switched around, for instance, you can still give the 8k here so he's at 15. This would make him 23, which would still make him hit Force, be 5k guard, and this will still swing for 45, which is an astronomical number, and that would force them to drop at least 25 to block Riptide, for instance, if you had that, if that was your if that was your setup. But what I'm showing you is that this attack can get annoying throughout the game. If this is the only attack that they're letting hit per turn, really, then that AK is going to put you at certain numbers where they're expecting, like, okay, I can drop a 15k shield to block this. Oh, well, now, with his ability, I have to drop a a 25k shield to block him instead of a 15k shield. If you put power on Tidal Assault, now it's kind of like, well, if I let one of these two hit, Maelstrom is restanding, which is another chance for some trigger checks, and it's a 15k swing on me, which, yes, it's a 5k intercept for a 1 to pass, but that's risky in itself. But then the 8k will give the ability for Tidal to at least hit to get either another damage on board, or at least a 10k shield out of the opponent's hand. So doing this throughout the majority of the game, what I have found is very, very productive. Now, having cards like getting double of him onto the board, where you can safely go 12 here, then 23, and then you can do 20 here or something like that, is okay. But I felt like that, his best spot is, now, if this was kind of switched around, I usually don't do it, but if this was kind of like switched around, then you can do, obviously you go Tidal first, 22, restand, Maelstrom, and then your third attack can be this for 23, and then this for 35. If the 23 hits, if this 23k column hits, then you can give the 8k power here, to your Excel Circle Tidal Assault. And then Tidal Assault, instead of being 22, he'll be at 30, which is still a really good number. So you can set him up that ways. And there's also ways where, if you have him on the, him over there, you have Tidal here, something funky happened, whatever it is, you still have a Tidal poke. And even if you don't have Tidal, we can still go with Lazarus. We can do a Lazarus poke at a rear guard. Then we can still drop Maelstrom, swing at the Vanguard, and then he'll swing for 21. And if he does happen to hit, if your opponent does let him hit, then you can go ahead and tag this 8k to Maelstrom, and then Maelstrom will, he'll drop his two cards, restand, and now Maelstrom swinging for another 23 while you still have Riptide loaded up. So those are just some sample plays, for instance, and obviously it doesn't always, work out as it does when you're just creating scenarios. But that's the kind of ideal you go for, is just putting Theo in positions so that through the longevity, through the majority of the game, he is in position to condition your opponent into guarding him a lot more often, because they don't want that extra shielding. They don't want to have to keep having to think about dropping 15 for one card and instead having to drop 25. That's not something they want to keep doing game per game per game, because the more they drop, and like I said, I always say this, Aqua Force is not a toss your hand down and rush deck. We have two cards in our deck that are these two cards. They are 2 attacks in one card. 2 attacks in one card. These 2 cards can get multiple cards out your opponent's hand. They're smaller attacks, but they lead up to bigger value. Like old school Maelstrom. You had your first, second, and third attack. When Maelstrom swung on the 4th battle, you counterblast 1, he gains 5, he gains 5,000 power, and if he hits, then you get to counterblast 1, draw 1, and blow up another rear guard. Again, you have all these small attacks, taking out their rear guards, forcing them to make bad decisions, whether it's guarding a rear guard or over guarding something, and then swinging in. With this version of Maelstrom, he kind of plays more like Tetra Drive was, at least attack pattern wise, where you would still swing, poke at a rear guard for 12, take out an intercept, especially if it's going to be intercept anyways, take out an intercept, see if they want to drop any shield to protect that intercept unit, then restand, then you can swing with Maelstrom, and then you still have 2 bigger attacks, your last 2 bigger attacks that can go at the Vanguard to threaten a Maelstrom restand, and then you might have another play afterwards to attack that. Or you could just spend the rest of your attacks, like if you don't have Riptide, you could spend the rest of your attacks, just swinging on your opponent's Vanguard to threaten a Maelstrom restand. you know, if you so choose to. And like I said, you don't always, you know, you're not always going for the Maelstrom restand play in a sense anyways. So, and you can still, you know, swing on a rear guard, see what they do with that, and then swing on a Vanguard, or however you want to do your pattern. Now, you don't do that often. You kind of still want to force your opponent to drop shield to threaten the restand, but that's basically, you know, how it goes. And a lot of different situations will come up when you can do this, but the main point of the video, again, is to set up Theo in the best position possible to condition your opponent over the majority of the game to figuring out, like, hey, this guy is getting annoying. This guy is, you know, causing me to have to drop more shielding because I keep letting him hit, because I am not valuing the first or second attack of a Maelstrom turn. That's the big oof for an opponent sometimes, is that they don't value the first or second attack of the Maelstrom turn. They value the third and the fourth attack, unless they're on 5 damage or, you know, getting nervous at 4 damage. They will not value the first 2 attacks of your turn at all. And what Theo brings is the ability just brings you that value, adds value to at least the second battle of the turn onwards. And like I said, your first attack, since they don't value it, that could be a throwaway at a rear guard. You win if they drop a 10 or a 15k shield. That's 5k more shield than they needed to guard. When you swing here, again, you're making them value this attack a lot more over the course of the game. They might not value it at first, but I promise you, when it gets later in the game, or when the game is just kind of running a little long and you're kind of just grinding it out, this 8k is going to start to matter when it comes to guarding, because you only have 16 triggers you can guard with. You know, sooner or later, they're going to have to start dropping, you know, multiple grade 1s or grade 1 and multiple 2s. So again, like, that just plays into the fact that this deck really would like to, you know, likes to tempo out the opponent, set the pace, you know, and control, you know, what your opponent is going to guard, what does your opponent want to sacrifice or do for their turn. Kind of thinking back to the Maelstrom reverse days, it's kind of like, you know, if you take this attack, that's 2 damage because you gain an extra crit. If you don't take this attack, I get to draw a card and blow up something on your board. So you know, my mindset, you know, from that, I'm trying to apply it here, where it's kind of like, what does your opponent want to give up, you know, in order to either stop the restand, or stop his power gain, you know, the Theo power gain throughout the turn. Because the beautiful thing is that when they guard when they spend an extra card for turn, guard your Maelstrom, and then they guard, you know, your extra, your extra 2 more threatening attacks to restand. So that means that they've guarded cards 3 times, and then you have, like, your last attack essentially to, you know, poke at a rear guard and further deny them counterblast, or just swing on their Vanguard, get a last damage you know, on board, so that they're a lot closer to 6 than they, you know, originally wanted to be. Or if they really just don't want to take this, then that's another shield at their hand that you're forcing the guard, because they're like, the first 2 attacks I'll probably eat or small guard, and then the next 2 I'll guard, and then, you know, you have something else there. But that's just my thinking. I run through a lot of scenarios, I run through a lot of different tests, and again, this comes from a lot of experience in tournaments, play testing, and things like that, that I've just, you know, really started to value Theo a whole lot more. And the fact that I'm now starting to, you know, use him a little bit more, I'm using him a lot more wisely. I'm putting him in position to best succeed over the longevity of a game. And I found that has led to a lot more success during games as well. All right, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see y'all later. Cardfight King, Aqua Life, baby. You already know what it is. Glory Maelstrom, he's almost here, baby. Oh, and next video, I'm going to actually cover Tidal Assault, and Algos. So stay tuned for that. Peace out.